Assalamu alaikum, Hazur. The first questioner is Mr. Chris Cheel, who is an English teacher of religion at Southfields Community College. Mr. Chris Cheel. It's a long question. How should we respond to the issue of research into human DNA, for example, the Human Genome Project? Are we, as a species, right to embark on efforts to make genetic modification? Is there a specific line we should not cross, or are we to believe that the effort of the scientists can benefit humanity?
I think this question should be answered in parts. You better remind me which part is left out, unfortunately. First of all, about the genetic engineering, I must quote the Holy Quran first, which speaks of so many other scientific discoveries of the future, but with no warning at all, except for genetic engineering. The Holy Quran clearly speaks that Satan will induce people to create new life on earth against the life of Allah. So there is a grave warning that this effort will kick back. So about the genetic engineering, I always advise Ahmadi genetic engineers that they could participate in it only as much as it promotes the creation of God. But when it is turned against the creation of God, in the sense, for instance, that when attempt is made to create new animals and bugs, etc., then that would be a disservice to humanity. It will kick back in the long end, and it may destroy their own creators, what they create. So that much is for the genetic engineering. And the next question, next part of the question, please.
It started with how should we respond, and then is there a specific line we should not cross?
I think I have already answered this question. I always advise Ahmadi genetic engineers to utilize their knowledge only to promote the creation of God. For instance, if new crops can be invented with the help of genetic engineering, and that is a dire need of the humanity today, although there are many objections raised against genetically produced food, but still it's not against the law of God. So it's a matter to be discussed between scientists of one class and one category and the scientists of the others. So I personally don't like genetically produced food, so it's all forbidden in the house. But still, it's not a sin to use it. That much I can say.
Mrs. Abbasi, who is from Spain. She says she has some knowledge of Islam. Mm-hmm. Her question is, I would like to know what differences, from your point of view, are there between Jesus and Muhammad, peace be upon them?
I think from one angle, if you look at Jesus and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them, there is no difference because both are from God. But there is a difference between the Jesus who is created by St. Paul, the Jesus of Trinity, the so-called Jesus who asked people to worship him. There is definitely a difference between that Jesus and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, in this way, there is a difference and there is no difference at all. So we believe Jesus to be an ordinary human being, extraordinary only in the sense that God created him with his will, not with his sperm. God has no sperm. So he was not literally the Son of God, only it was a word of endearment which was used for him. So in that respect, there is no difference between Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Jesus ﷺ. Again, there is, there is one more difference. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam admonished Muslims that if they break their ties with any prophet of God, anywhere in the world, in any age, that would be tantamount to breaking their ties with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. There is no such admonishment reported to Jesus that he made any such claim. Never have I heard or read that Jesus said, whoever breaks ties with Prophet Muhammad or with all other prophets in the world, he breaks ties with me. So this is a sense of universality in Islam, which binds all the prophets of the world to Prophet Muhammad, and if they refuse any of the past prophets, they break their ties with Prophet Muhammad as well, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Mr. Al-Hassan Al-Abubakar Dimbala from Ghana. He is a businessman and he has accepted Ahmadiyya today.
Mr. Abubakar, what's your question? You read it? Or
the question is,
please sit down.
As an Ahmadi Muslim, how important is it that we find an Ahmadi mosque to say prayers in? Can we say our prayers in any mosque?
Ahmadis can say their prayer in any mosque, because according to the Holy Quran, the mosques are built for Allah, and anybody who believes in Allah can go to the mosque. But people, unfortunately, have owned the mosques according to their sectarian attitudes, with the result that they do not permit people, Muslims of other sects, to say their prayers in their mosques. Particularly, they are extremely allergic to Ahmadis. And if, to their knowledge, an Ahmadi says his prayer in their mosque, they might even go to the extreme of murdering him. So it's better not to break their hearts unnecessarily. Let them enjoy their mosque, because they're not the mosques of God, they're their mosques.
Hazur, the next questioner is an Arab, and he is sitting in the translation booth, listening to the translation. Mm-hmm. His name is Abdullah Khalil, and he is from Egypt doing a teacher training course in mathematics.
I think he is the one who met me this morning.
I don't know.
Yes. Yes, please.
Many Arab Muslims believe that the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, physically went to Jerusalem on Isra, and then physically went to heaven on the Mi'raj. What is the Ahmadiyya point of view concerning this?
There is no question of any physical movement of the body of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he is reported to have visited Jerusalem. On the contrary, there is positive evidence that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not go physically to Jerusalem and saw all the temples, etc. Because while he was stating that he had gone to Jerusalem in that vision, a Jew stood up and said, if you're right, then tell us what are the features of the temple, etc., and all other things about Jerusalem. So Hazrat Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in answer, described all that he saw, but with this comment that God has placed me God had brought before my vision. When I was answering this question, God had brought before my vision all that had been asked about. So that positively debunks the idea that Ahmad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam physically visited there. And about his ascent to heaven, one should note it, that why did he go to heaven? To see God sitting on the other side? What sort of God that was so limited that he was not there where Prophet Muhammad himself was. So it's all medieval gossip about these things from the accepted traditions of the Holy Quran, of the Hazrat Rasulullah Sallam. That's the traditions which can be positively relied upon. One can prove the contrary. Ahmad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is reported by Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anha that when he visited the so-called heaven and went beyond the space to where there was nothing else but across there was God, he was sleeping here in Khana Kaaba. And his body was not removed from there. So this positive evidence shows that this is only a story, a tale, which is made by medieval Muslim scholars, and it has nothing to do with the fact of Ahmad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his journey.
Mr. Robert Basso, who is a Christian and believes in one God. If I do good works and help your community, do I still have to become Ahmadi to go to heaven?
If you do good works for the sake of Allah, you do not have to help our community at all to go to heaven. What is our community? It's the service to God and service to mankind which will be appreciated by God. And the Holy Quran positively relates this, that if you believe in one God and in the hereafter and do good deeds, whatever the name of your faith be, you may be granted full pardon and full reward of your services by Allah. It's up to Him who knows what passes in the hearts. So there is no question of serving any particular community. You go ahead and serve the mankind, but just for the sake of God. Thank you.
Kujtim Allah from Kosovo. How well known is Jamaat Ahmadiyyat in the world? How well known is Jamaat?
Jamaat Ahmadiyya is progressively being known throughout the world in so many countries of the world. Progressively in the sense that the news I received yesterday is different from the news I received today, because everywhere Ahmadiyyat is progressing by leaps and bounds. It's impossible to keep the count. According to the latest figures, Ahmadiyyat has already spread in 190 countries of the world, and is still spreading on and on. So with the grace of Allah, this year at our Jalsa, you will come to know the facts that how fast Ahmadi is spreading in the world. It's too early for me to disclose it, but I assure you that you will be amazed to learn that the progress made by other religions in 100 years has been made by Ahmadiyyat in 1 year alone.
Abu Hamza Ali, he is also in the translation booth, listening to the Arabic translation. Allah prohibited alcohol in 3 stages. Many Arabs say the first 2 stages have been abrogated with the coming of the 3rd. Why did not Allah just reveal that alcohol was prohibited straight away, and has any verse of the Holy Quran been abrogated?
We don't believe in abrogation of any verses by any other verses. It's absolutely wrong. The fact is that according to the old custom inherited by the Arabs, the companions of the Holy Prophet used to drink, but the verses of the Quran warned them against it. And it used the term "Va'antum sukara." Don't go near the prayer. Don't go to worship God when you are not into your full senses. Now, sukara applies also to the overwhelming sleep. So it's a word used for both drinking and sleep as well. When you can't command your senses and your thoughts, then you must not try to worship God, because you may say things which are out of your control. This was how the Arab society was gradually prepared. There was no abrogation at all. Arab society was being gradually prepared to ultimately completely reject alcoholism or drinks of alcohol in any form. So when the final verse was revealed, it is reported that Hazrat, not only one Hazrat, but many companions, in fact, of the Holy Prophet, were in the state of drinking. They were in a drinking party. When they heard this news that someone went to tell them on the beat of drum, tell the whole of Medinites to the beat of drum, that alcohol is totally forbidden. So, when they were in that revelry, this announcement reached them. They started breaking the, what do we call it? Pitchers, etc. Yes. One of them raised objection and said, let's find out first from Rasulullah Sallam whether it is on his behalf that he is saying. He is announcing this announcer. Now the answer of the party was, we'll break the pitchers first and go to inquire afterwards. So ever since, alcohol was completely forbidden. And unfortunately, although the Muslims, they are here in London as well, who call themselves Muslims but drink alcohol like water, but it is forbidden. They will be held answerable.
Mr. Miftar from Kosovo. Miftar. Why is there always trouble in Muslim countries?
Ask them. I'm always troubled by their troubles. It's very unfortunate. The message of Islam, which they try to convey to the world, is a distorted message of Islam. It's very troublesome. If you believe in that sort of Islam in which they believe, the medievals, there will always be trouble in the name of Islam. So I denounce that. On behalf of the Ahmadiyya community all over the world, I tell you that we do not agree with these troublemakers' Islam. We believe in Islam as it stands for peace. Trouble and peace do not go together. So Islam means peace. So wherever we preach, we convey the message of peace, and that's all.
Mr. Darren Wilcox, who's a British Christian researcher. Darren Wilcox.
British?
Researcher, he's Christian. Is it not idolatry to bow down to a stone object, for example, a statue or shrine, or the Kaaba in Mecca?
To bow down to a statue is idolatry. But to bow down in the direction of Kaaba from all over the world, from all directions, is not idolatry, because this is done only to teach the Muslims that they must have their faces to one God. And when they face Kaaba, they never think of Kaaba at all. The Holy Prophet advised that they must concentrate on God throughout their prayer, so much so that they should think that they are watching God. Kaaba completely disappears from their mental eye. And if they can't do that, they should at least realize that while they are saying their prayers, God is watching them. So Kaaba, doing the act of prayer, is neither here nor there. So it is not idolatry.
Mr. Yusuf Ahmed Chilton, who is English. How many times should a Muslim give bay'ah at the hands of the Khalifa?
Once is enough. But out of their own desire to be initiated again and again, people join me. But just once is quite enough for a lifetime. For the lifetime of the Caliph and for the lifetime of the person who does that bay'at.
Hazur, I have two questioners that are asking similar questions. The first is Edney Boston Griffiths, who is a medical student from Sierra Leone.
Where is he? Yes.
And Sarah Judy, who became a Muslim after being a Sikh.
Where is he? She. Achha. She became a Muslim after?
She was a Sikh before.
Sikh before.
Sikh.
This is right.
They are questions about the status of men and women in Islam. So the first question is, why is there separation between men and women?
There is no separation between men and women. It's impossible to separate men and women because they are tied according to Islam in the ceremony of marriage, and they are devoted to each other from ever on. So there is no separation in that sense. But to discourage illicit relationship, women are guarded against men's eyes and men's touches, because they always try to win women illicitly to them. So women are protected from men. Men are also protected from women. In the same course, both are protected from each other, but the compliments go to the women that Islam considers them to be more pious by nature, more chaste in their nature. And the same, unfortunately, cannot be said about the men of any age.
Sarah also asks, do Muslim women have to wear a hijab, and is it forbidden for them to wear makeup?
Women are admonished to wear hijab, and it varies, the definition of hijab varies from the society to society. In fact, if you see some Arab women nowadays here, they do not wear any hijab to cover their face. Some Ahmadi girls in England would be seen with their faces fully covered except eyes. And in between the two, there are many grades of hijab. The basic essential role of parda, that is hijab, is to protect women's chastity. And it all depends upon which society they come from. Some Ahmadi women, English women who have accepted Ahmadiyyat here, they just dress themselves decently. They don't show their arms or their legs and do not cover their face fully. In my opinion, they are absolved from any break of their responsibility. They are doing hijab all right. Hijab, in fact, is a matter of one's heart. I have noticed that those women who do that hijab, they somehow announce to the world that they are not for them. And wayward eyes do not fall upon them with any greed. So that is the true hijab. But in the society where hijab is traditionally held, like this burqa in Pakistan, when you break that hijab, girls, the younger generation particularly, feels that they are liberated from hijab and they can do anything they like. So to discourage this tendency of false freedom, we tell the older generations to keep an eye on such girls and prevent them from breaking away their ties. But if they don't, then we don't compel. According to Islam, there is no compulsion in religion. We do it only by advice and admonition. If they don't take our advice and admonition, they're free to do whatever they like. To their own disadvantage, of course.
Mr. Besim from Kosovo. How many Jamaats are there in the world? No, how many Jamaats are there in Islam? How many Jamaats, communities?
There is only one Jamaat in Islam, to my knowledge. That is Ahmadiyya Jamaat. The rest are only Jamaats in name, because they are separated. Jamaat means when you are united in one organization and you learn to rise and sit according to one voice. So there cannot be any Jamaat in the world without there being a Khalifa. Khalifa unites the East and West, North and South, and the Jamaats, wherever they are, whether in Kosovo or outside, they always follow his instructions. There are spiritual instructions, of course, within the four walls of the Holy Quran and the tradition of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is, of course, conditional. Such instructions as are issued within Islam to the Muslims by Khalifa, they are always followed and taken care of by the Ahmadi Muslims all over the world. Whether they are Africans or Europeans or Australians or Indonesians, it doesn't make any difference. So as such, with this definition of the Jamaat, I can positively say that no other sect of Islam can claim to be bound in a Jamaat.
Miss Kinga Stanzik, who is a student from Poland.
Yes, please.
How did the promised Messiah come to know that he was the promised one?
By Allah. It was never a thought which grew from his heart that perhaps he is promised Messiah until he was told by God that he was. He never claimed. In the beginning, on the contrary, although he was told, addressed by God as Messiah and the promised Messiah, out of his humility, he always tried to interpret it differently. But when repeatedly Allah told him that you are the promised Messiah, then he had no way out but to accept it and declare himself to be that prophet of God who was promised to be the Messiah.
Mr. William Gates. Mr. William Gates, he is a voluntary worker at Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital.
Please.
On the question of life after death, does Islam believe the same as Christianity? And if we all meet and there are differences on earth, are these differences resolved after death?
This question is rather vague because he has not explained what Christians believe. So how can I compare it? But I can generally speak on this subject based on the authority of the Quran and the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. The concept of a paradise, which seems to be a physical thing, somewhere in the universe or beyond the borders of the universe, is false. The Holy Quran rejects this concept, and at the same time it rejects the concept of a physical hell anywhere in the world. The Holy Quran very clearly says, I'll quote this verse. I know, but it has just slipped me. I don't want to attribute anything or a word wrongly to God. So I'll tell you this verse. It means, I know the meaning anyway, it means that make haste to get the forgiveness of God and to enter His paradise, whose expanse is like the expanse of the entire universe. When this verse was recited by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his companions, they were amazed. He said, "O Prophet of God, if the expanse of the heaven is like the expanse of the entire universe, then where would hell go then? Where would hell be?" Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam answered that it will be there, but you do not understand. The same space, time, space, whatever you call it, which will be occupied by heaven, will also be occupied by hell, but the people of hell would not know what the people of heaven are and what they are doing, so the vice versa. Really? Today I was reciting the Holy Quran and I went to this part, and I thought I must remember it clearly so that it may come as a question. And look here at me. Now I have forgotten. You'll find out. Let's go to the next question, please.
Mr. Gordon Burke, who's an Afro-Caribbean medical student. When Ahmadiyyat reaches the same age as Christianity, do you think the original message of Ahmadiyyat would have deteriorated?
Yes, definitely. 2000 years is a lot of time, and messages do deteriorate. Like the buildings, like the great palaces built by people, earlier people, everything deteriorates. Only it's God who remains undeteriorated. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سارعوا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وسارعوا إلى مغفرة من ربكم وجنة أرضها السماوات والأرض أعدت للمتقين. This is verse number 134 from chapter Al Imran, which is number 4, which is number 3. And the translation of this verse is, and vie with one another in asking for forgiveness from your Lord and for a paradise whose price is the heavens and the earth, prepared for the God-fearing.
Now the price is wrongly translated here. Arzuha means the expense, the breadth and width and length. So unfortunately there's some mistakes in the translation, because arz can also be translated literally as price. So the translator first thought of that meaning, so he can't be said to be wrong, but in this context he is wrong. Because Ahmad, the Holy Prophet, did not understand it in this concept of value, of cost. That is why when he recited this verse before his companions, he said, if the expanse of the earth, they didn't say the price, if the expanse of the earth is covering the whole universe, then where the head would be? Please.
Mr. Peter Ying San Mao, who is a Chinese foreign exchange trader. How would you prove the existence of Allah to a non-believer?
Existence of Allah can be proved to the non-believers by looking at the creation of the world, at everything. It's amazing how scientists close their eyes to these things. In my book, Revelation, I have revealed many things which are positive proof that evolution is not blind evolution. Everything created has a purpose and has a mechanism which cannot come into being automatically through any evolution. First of all, there was a question of genes, and the scientists know that there are genes and they cannot give any evidence of their evolution. Where did they come into? Where did they start from? How from dead earth suddenly the genes sprang up? And among other things, the most surprising thing is chlorophyll. Although the scientists try to give evolutionary history of other materials necessary for the development and maintenance of life, they can't give a single explanation as to how chlorophyll was evolved. There is no history of evolution of chlorophyll at all. And without chlorophyll, life could not exist. The green grass which the cows and other milking animals eat, it has chlorophyll. And it is only by the virtue of that chlorophyll that everything is converted into other chemicals. The entire phenomenon of getting milk and fat from out of grass and bones and brain and all the organs of the human body, they all are due to the presence of chlorophyll, without which these bodies could not exist. So, to cut the matter short, I'll advise you, if you know English very well, I hope you do, to get a copy of my book Revelation and go through this chapter. You'll be amazed to find that there are questions raised against the scientists which can never be answered by them. I go for a morning walk daily where I hear nowadays the sound of woodpecker. Now, scientists know very well that the woodpecker strikes at the trunk of the tree to scare the worms hidden within so that they come out, like you knock at the door and somebody comes out, just to eat them. But they strike so hard that their brain should have gone it would have gone kaput completely by the first or two strikes only. But they have a cushioning system between their beaks and the brain. And that cushion which is created in between, which does not exist in the form of, in the beak of any other bird, only in the beak of the woodpecker. That takes the load and cushions it, so the strike force, so that it is subdued when it reaches the brain. Now tell me, how could it have become possible by evolving? When was the first woodpecker created? And if he stuck with the same force, he would have been destroyed and killed. But how many generations of woodpeckers were killed before they evolved to this state? When they were killed, what was left there for evolution at all to work on woodpeckers? So if you open your eyes, you can see the existence of God day and night in everything created. Consider yourself. You have a beautiful design. You have eyes, you have brain, you have ears. And whatever the message of eye to the brain is conveyed through some ducts with electrical messages. And they are preserved in the brain somewhere. So much so that you remember the incident of seeing something from your childhood, and it is preserved in the brain, and whenever you want to recall it, you immediately get it. Where is it preserved and how this system of brain works and so on and so forth? The tales you can tell about your own body are unlimited. What the scientists have studied about the brain is only superficial so far. But volumes upon volumes are written about the surface of the brain. What is happening inside it, they don't know. So if you want to learn about the existence of God, try to look at the things around you with contemplation and depth. And try sometimes to think about yourself. How were you made? How your eyes came into being? How the complicated system of your ears came into being? And all that. So I think for the time being, let it suffice. And I hope you will read the relevant chapter in my book, Revelation, where all these things are answered. Thank you.
Mr. Rifat Audi, who is from Burton Jamaat, but originally a Roma.
Roma?
Roma, he's put down. Gypsy, the Roma.
And I know that Roma, yes, that's right, yes.
He asked, why are the Roma people of former Yugoslavia going through so much hardship and no Muslim is helping them?
We try always to help them. As Ahmadi Muslims, we not only help them, we have many Roman Ahmadis who have a settled life, who change themselves so much that there is no more theft, which unfortunately is their habit. So they do not steal anymore, they do not create trouble for their neighbors, etc. While the Romans, even in England, when they move in caravans, you see they create terror in the entire society where they set. And unfortunately, they are given to this habit of stealing and destroying life. So many things, unfortunately, go into them according to their traditions. But we are helping them. As I've told you, mashallah, with the grace of Allah, we have many reformed Romans who are now leading a settled life. Thank you.
Mr. Tahir Naeem from Glasgow. He is a buyer in a department store. Many miracles have been shown which seem to be against the laws of nature. Do the laws of nature change? And can we divide these laws into physical and spiritual laws of nature?
As far as the first part of the question goes, there is no miracle against the laws of nature. The miracle is only against the then known of laws of nature. I can give you many examples of this. When the science progresses, but there is an age in science when a certain area is not understood by the scientists. So if God controls the laws of nature to produce a natural thing, it will be amazing for the people of that age, because until then that natural law has not been fully understood. Now, I can give you a simple example, very simple. You know, magnetic force. If somebody bears a helmet, strong helmet, and a very strong magnet is fixed in the ceiling, if it is strong enough, the man along with his helmet can be lifted. Now, when people did not understand this law, and someone, suppose, stood underneath wearing a helmet underneath a magnet, he would be lifted and people would say, here is a miracle, here is a miracle. While it is just a natural thing. It's not a miracle at all. It only becomes miracle when, to prove the authenticity of a prophet, Allah employs these laws of nature which the Prophet himself does not know and does not know how to employ them. When he employs them to his advantage, for that period, that becomes a miracle.
The next questioner is a British lady called Agnes. I'm afraid I can't read the surname.
Please.
Sorry, what?
Surname?
Agnes Thompson. She asked a number of questions on the nature of spirit. The questions are, what does the spirit look like? What does God look like? And what happens to our spirits when we die?
See, the word spirit is rather confusing. I should better use the word soul. And soul cannot be seen, nor can God be seen. Because the phenomenon of seeing requires that your sight returns to your eyes after striking a hard surface, comparatively denser surface. If it doesn't return, then you do not see anything. So God has no dense surface at all, nor has spirit, or soul as I call it. So you can never see soul or God with your naked eyes. But you can visualize both according to their attributes. Soul has certain attributes mentioned in the Quran and many other books, and also God has so many attributes. When you consider an attribute of God, with the spiritual eye, you are seeing God. When you see that God is Rahman, is most beneficent, then you know what beneficence is. So with the same eye as from which you know what beneficence is, you know what God is. So this is how God's attributes tell what God is. And in the prayer, we are admonished by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to concentrate on God's attributes. By those attributes will be introduced to God.
The last part of the question was, what happens to our souls when we die? After death, what happens to our souls?
I've already answered this question, because it depends on the soul of a good person or a soul of a bad person. Whatever we do to our souls here, we give birth to the same soul in the hereafter. Now it will be difficult for you to fully understand this until you realize that all the evil people their expressions change as well. Look at their eyes, and they look sort of vacant of holiness or righteousness. Look at the eyes of the corrupt SHOs in Pakistan. There are many. There is no shortage of them. And you will realize how terrible they look. They seem to be emptied of all piety. But when you look at a pious man, really pious, you may be deceived by apparent looks, but in reality, you can see him. If he is not a hypocrite, that's a different story. Only Allah knows a hypocrite what he is. But in most cases, that piety is written large on his face and his expressions. So here the soul is revealed in attributes, not in physical terms. Thank you. And this soul will go to heaven. This soul will either go to heaven or to hell. Now, this question just reminds me of a Russian joke, with due pardon from our Russian friends if they are sitting here, or if they hear it afterwards. It is said that a KGB man was watching over the head of someone who was reading Hebrew lessons. And he was an old man. So after a while he said, "What are you doing? Why are you learning Hebrew at this age?" He said, "You know, I have heard that the language in paradise would be Hebrew. So I'm preparing myself for that language, for that possibility of going to heaven." He said, "If you go to hell instead," he said, "I know Russian as well." Don't you worry. Come on, next question, please.
Hazur, Mr. Sharif Judy, who is an Algerian.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu. Please.
Fortunately, the question is, what is the language of Jannah, heaven?
It's not Hebrew.
The question. I was trying to talking about language in the hereafter. I mean the Jannah and the Nar.
You see, the language in the hereafter is very difficult to explain unless you say it would be Arabic. Because it's difficult to say because there are millions of people who do not know any Arabic and who would be admitted to heaven. So how would they express themselves? In my opinion, that expression is only that of the souls, which is related without words. So, whatever name you give that language, it is the language of the heart which is transferred to another heart, or language of the mind which is transferred to in another mind. Parapsychology has made some advances in this, and they have proved that human thinking can be transferred without any language to another person who does not know that language. For instance, they have experimented that some person, English-knowing person, should think of something and concentrate on thinking that to convey the message to a Japanese friend of his who is also psychic in this sense and who can receive the message according to parapsychology. So he knows only Japanese, but he would understand that. And they have put this to test in so many ways. So in my opinion, the language in the heaven would be something of that nature where minds and hearts will convey themselves to the others. Otherwise, of course, there are hundreds of languages in the world and languages extinct as well, so many. How would they confer with each other in the heaven if not so? Thank you.
Mr. Fazal Brahimi from Macedonia. Yes. Is there life on other planets?
Yes, most certainly. There is life on other planets or other stars or their planets. But there is most certainly life there because according to the Holy Quran, such life as we find here on earth, a life similar to that exists elsewhere also, and that life form would come into communion with human life form one day.
The next question is a British civil servant, David, I think it's O'Donnell. Christianity teaches that sacrifice was necessary for the forgiveness of sins through Jesus Christ. What do Muslims teach and believe?
we believe that sacrifice is necessary on the part of the sinner to achieve forgiveness. If you sin and somebody else sacrifices for you, that will be illogical for you to accept, to believe even for a minute that your sins will be forgiven. Now there are how many Christians in the world? 1 billion or more. And most of them, unfortunately, in this present distorted age, have become sinners. So you think just their belief in Jesus Christ would transfer all their sins to the shoulders of Jesus Christ? It's just a myth. It's just a tale. It has no substance in it.